Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope you're well and you've had a good couple of weeks. I have had a brilliant time once again, I'm delighted to say. A few Saturdays ago, I went and saw Paul Sinha do the show that he did at the most recent Edinburgh Fringe Festival at Hemel Hempstead Town Hall. It's a venue that I've only started going to in the last year or so, and they do get lots of good comedians down there, either touring various shows or doing a lot of work in progress stuff as well. Trouble is, it's a very small venue, so unless you get in first for a work in progress, you might miss out. For example, Michael McIntyre did one there, and I think that sold out in about 2 minutes. You might know Paul from ITV's The Chase. He is one of the chasers on there, as well as being one of the top quizzers in the UK. He has been doing stand-up comedy for a very long time now, and he was also once a qualified doctor. More recently, he's had his own series on Radio 4, Paul Sinha's Perfect Pub Quiz, which I would recommend. It's educational and also very funny as well. Anyway, somehow I'd actually never seen him live before. My girlfriend fancied seeing him as well, so we got ourselves some tickets. The gig was sold out, which was great to see. Although we did have a little bit of a nightmare getting there. We thought we'd go for dinner first somewhere, and we believed we'd allowed ourselves plenty of time to eat and get to the venue in time for the start of the show. However, we got a bit unlucky in that the place we chose to go was as busy as I've ever seen it, and because it was so busy, they were very slow taking our order, getting us the food, and it took way longer than we thought. But we left there thinking, oh great, we've still got time, no problem. We drove to the car park round the corner from the venue that we normally park in. That was full, no parking places, and not another car park within a 20-minute walk. By this point, the show starts in about 7 minutes, so we are a little bit up against it. Happily, we done another loop of the one-way street that Hemel Hempstead Town Hall sits upon, and as it happens, when we went past this time, there was a space right outside, which I just about managed to parallel park into. What I realised at that moment was, for whatever reason, I don't think I've had to parallel park a car for about 15 years. So it wasn't the smoothest manoeuvre ever, but I got the car in and we got into the building and into our seats with about a minute to spare. On the way in, right at the back of the venue, we passed Paul Sinha's husband. I only knew who that was because they both appeared on Gogglebox together, the celebrity version. He was going to film the gig for his other half, so it seemed. We were in our seats when Paul walked out and the show started. It was done in 2 halves. He kind of split his Edinburgh show into 2 parts. It was a very autobiographical show about past and present situations that he'd been in. I'm not sure how aware you are of his situation, but over the last couple of years, he's actually been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which obviously going forward is sadly going to affect his ability to do certain things. Ultimately, eventually, it may lead to him having to stop performing, but at the moment, he's absolutely fine and did a fantastic job. I thought the show was brilliant. Very, very funny. There were some bits I wasn't really expecting. It was honest, it was real, it was funny, and the finale was great as well. It was all very cleverly put together, had a fantastic evening, and he was just great as well, particularly at the end. Very happy to stay on stage after he'd finished the gig and after he'd done his encore, have photos with people, chat to everybody who was there. It was a really, really good night. Here's another one who's definitely worth seeing if you get the chance. If nothing else, just for his story and what happened to him at the Trick Awards the other year. I do like city breaks and a nice extended weekend away somewhere. Been lucky this year to do a few, but we haven't done one for ages, so we managed to book a few nights in Edinburgh recently. I have been there a few times over the years. I actually have family from Dumfries. My granddad came from there, so I visited that area in Scotland quite a bit. And from there, when I was about 12, one of our relatives took us to Edinburgh Castle and we did a tour and had a good look round the city. Since then, I've been back twice to go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, although when I'm up for the Fringe, I basically spend the entire time just running between comedy shows, so don't really get to fully appreciate the city. Obviously this time, no comedy going on, just me and my girlfriend there, so it was time to do a bit of exploring and reacquaint myself with the capital of Scotland. We got a decent deal on the flights, which made it actually the quickest and cheapest way to get there. And there is a tram that runs from Edinburgh Airport right into the centre of the city. So for ease, we just hopped on that and took that when we arrived. Now, we did get there a bit too early to be able to check straight in to our hotel, but we thought we'd go there anyway, just in case we could get an early check-in, and also at the very least to see if they could hold our bags while we went exploring. Now, in the hotel booking process for work, my girlfriend gets points when she stays on business trips, and she's got a collection of these. So when we were looking for a hotel in Edinburgh, we were looking at the group she had the points with, and we had a choice of two, and we went for the slightly better one, which meant she put a few more points towards it, so it kept the price reasonable. Now, we thought it was a slight upgrade on the hotel we were previously looking at. However, when we arrived and the concierge greeted us at the door, we realised it was probably a bigger trade-up than we realised. We couldn't check into the room, but they were happy to look after our bags, and then they were going to take them to the room when our room became available for us. And as it turned out, they'd actually given us a free room upgrade as well. Result. So we left our bags at the hotel and just went for a walk to find our bearings, really. Now, I can't take the credit for this, but Linda had done some research on where to eat gluten-free in Edinburgh. She'd found a celiac blogger who had suggested good places to eat in the city, but they were all local independent businesses, so no big chain places, just all local companies. Now, I'm not sure if this is unusual or not, but I've always liked haggis since I tried it as a child. And obviously I was a bit concerned, now being a celiac and gluten-free, I may not be able to have any. Well, thanks to the blog that Linda found, there was a place on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh that did gluten-free haggis and was highly recommended. So therefore, after we'd done a bit of exploring, we went to the haggis shop and we both had some haggis each, which came with a whiskey and mustard sauce and, of course, neeps and tatties. You have to have your haggis with that. It was fantastic. And this put me at ease because when the waiter brought my food over, he said, apologies about the wait, but it took a bit longer as we had to wipe the surface down before we got your food, which made me very happy. It tasted great, and we'd only been in Scotland about 2.5 hours, and already we were enjoying some traditional Scottish fare. After the haggis, we had a bit of a further walk round, and then we got a message from the hotel saying our room was available to check in. So then we went back to the hotel, got our room cards and went up to our room. Our bags were already there and had been delivered, and they also gave us a complimentary bottle of Prosecco. Now, I am not actually drinking alcohol at the moment, haven't been for a while. We had this whole bottle, so we sat there. Linda had a few glasses of the Prosecco and I had a couple of cups of tea. It was a very relaxing afternoon. The room as well was brilliant. It was themed in an old school movie style, which I really liked. So we just sat there drinking our respective beverages and made plans about what we were going to do later on. As it turned out, this hotel we were staying in had a special happy hour for hotel residents between 5 and 6. It was a very happy hour because hotel guests could get a free drink. Well, we both thought it would be rude not to take advantage of that, so we did. Before we went to Edinburgh, we pre-booked a couple of things, the first of which was a ghost tour, which we were doing that evening. Now, I will be honest, I don't believe in ghosts. I went on a ghost tour when I was in New Orleans, and that was really good. It was interesting, full of historical facts, and to be fair, the presenter on that didn't convince me there were ghosts, but certainly made me think about it a bit deeper than I normally would. So, as Edinburgh is supposedly the most haunted city in the United Kingdom, it made sense to do the ghost tour. We arrived at the meeting point, and there was about a group of 20 of us. The person taking it was dressed in a black cape to maybe set the mood, and off we went. Now, they walked us round a selection of areas in the city, looking at certain buildings, told us various stories about rumoured ghosts in different places, strange activities and poltergeists. One of the places we did visit was Greyfriars Graveyard, the place where Greyfriars Bobby, the very loyal dog, used to sit on his owner's grave for years and years until the dog himself passed away. Although that story was slightly tainted for me many years ago thanks to a brilliant Frank Skinner comedy routine about it. There were quite a few historical facts as well on the ghost tour, which I liked. And the main reason we picked this tour was because it had a section where it went into the underground streets in Edinburgh. They're quite famous. There's various chambers. They built a whole city pretty much underground because there was just no room to build anywhere else at one point. It was vibrant. It was very well used. But then there were issues with it. It started leaking, falling to bits. So the people who had made it their workplace and their living area, they left it. And basically, in the end, most of the homeless people from all around Edinburgh and surrounding area set up camp in there and made it their own. And because it's quite dark and underground, it would seem that it is apparently haunted. So we finished down there. The thing is, the ghost tour for me was trying a bit hard because when we got down there, for example, there was a set up fake skeleton in some stocks. There'd also, in one corner, sat a skeleton supposedly drinking some wine. It just seemed like they were trying a bit too hard and maybe not taking themselves too seriously, which, if that was the point, I'm fully on board with that. Anyway, we did the tour. It lasted about an hour and a half. We did not experience any paranormal activity whatsoever. The next day, we popped in for a drink at the pub that's supposedly the most haunted pub in Edinburgh. And again, that was trying a bit too hard in that it kind of had Halloween-style decorations up. They had their own range of themed cocktails, and the tables were shaped like coffins, and it was dark. It didn't feel like it was particularly haunted, although it was cold, I will give it that. After the ghost tour, we did have, of course, a dinner reservation. Being us, we do like to eat well wherever we are. Now, as a celiac, I don't often get the chance to have traditional style fish and chips. As it happened, in Edinburgh, there's a place called Bertie's Fish and Chips, which does gluten-free fish and chips. So we had booked a table there. And I must say, it's a really nice restaurant. The staff were fantastic. It looks great, themed perfectly. We had a lovely time in there. They even had squid for starter, gluten-free, which I could have, so I did. Gluten-free, haddock and chips, and then also they managed to do me an apple and caramel crumble for pudding. Food was fantastic, had a brilliant time in there. Would recommend it whether you're gluten-free or not if you like decent fish and chips in a restaurant. We stopped for a drink in a pub on the way back, and then we called a close to day one of our Edinburgh adventure. The main focus of day 2 was a guided tour around Edinburgh Castle. Again, I'd been there before. It was many years ago with my mum's cousin. He took us around himself, but this time we'd booked a tour guide to go with. I was, though, very excited about breakfast first. As it turned out, about 15 minutes from where we were staying, there was a fully gluten-free cafe. So we went there for our breakfast, and I managed to have a full English breakfast fry-up, something that I don't often get to have when we're out or staying at hotels, because it's impossible almost for people to make them fully gluten-free with the way they cook things for cross-contamination or the products they buy. At this place, though, because it was a specialist cafe, I could have that, and I must say I thoroughly enjoyed it. As we were leaving and dashing off to make our tour, I had to take a millionaire shortcake for the journey. That was also great. We got very lucky with the tour of Edinburgh Castle. I think we found there was actually only 6 people in total on the tour, which was great. Our tour guide, David, was brilliant. It started a little bit down the Royal Mile on the approach to the castle. So he introduced himself, then we walked up to the castle car park, in effect, and he gave us an overview of the history of the castle from there and talked us through some of the things we could see from where we were, because it's basically sat on an old volcano, so you're nice and high and have great 360-degree views all around. Now, the tour guides take people in on time tickets. They have a certain time when they can take their group in. Also, they're not allowed to actually go into any of the buildings or any of the main areas. They kind of have to stick to the roadway and take you up that. So that's how the tour panned out. We slowly made our way into the castle and kind of round the roadway that spirals round and goes right to the top. Stopped at several points on the way round for him to tell us about what we could see and explain what we could see later when the tour is finished, if we decide to go in any of the various buildings and have a look around what they have in there. While we were standing outside the castle, we heard a gun go off, which for a moment was slightly alarming, but as it turns out, every day at 1 p.m. exactly, they fire a cannon from the castle, and they've done that for hundreds of years. It's a big tradition. Originally, it was because ships used to navigate by time, and clocks weren't that great back then, so they generally lost time and needed resetting a lot. So they used to fire the gun every day at 1 p.m. from the castle, so ships in the surrounding area, when they heard that, would know it's exactly 1 o'clock and they'd reset their clocks to 1 p.m. Now it's just a ceremonial and traditional thing, but they do it every day. One of the things you can see from Edinburgh Castle is the building that supposedly J.K. Rowling based Hogwarts on. She is rumoured to have written the first draft of the first book in a cafe just outside Edinburgh, and there is this big school building that's visible from the castle. It's believed she thought looked a bit like, or could look like, a wizard school, and that is what Hogwarts is based on, apparently. I had to take the guide's word for this because I've never read any of the books or seen any of the films. The tour was great. It lasted about an hour and a half. We found that lots of interesting information. Sadly, we couldn't go and see the Scottish Crown Jewels and the Stone of Destiny that they hold there, because a few days before, some Scottish students had tried to steal the Stone of Destiny from Edinburgh Castle. I don't know if they knew their history at all, but there's many reasons why the castle was built where it was. One of the main ones is it is a very good fort, almost impossible to get into, unless, of course, you buy a ticket as a tourist nowadays, but certainly very difficult to get out of and pretty well protected by the military. So their attempt failed, but they'd done some damage, which meant we couldn't go into the building where the jewels were housed. However, we could go into the Great Hall, which we did, and we also saw the room in which King James VI was born. and obviously found out lots of Scottish history, including something I don't know how I didn't know, but I didn't know. The official animal of Scotland is a unicorn. I know that's not a real animal. Take it up with them, not me. One of the things I did want to visit at the castle was the Memorial of Remembrance. In that, they have lots of books that have the name of every single Scottish soldier who has lost their life while on duty in any of the wars or other military engagements that they've been involved in. The reason I wanted to visit this is my great-gramp was actually killed in the First World War at the Battle of the Somme. So I wanted to see his name in the book, find out some information of how he died, when he died. I know he's on the wall in Belgium. His name is listed there. Anyway, the tour guide, before he left us, did say that if you go and speak to the staff, if you know the name and the regiment of your relative, they will be able to find them in the book for you. And sure enough, when we were in there, I had a bit of a look around myself to see if I could see my great-gramp on the wall anywhere. Then I asked a member of staff, told them which regiment he was in, and indeed his name. And yep, they found him. James Scott Irvine was there in the book. He was killed in action in 1917. Quite a poignant and very reflective moment. I know it's only a name in a book, but he's very much part of my family, and it meant quite a bit just to actually see it and go there and visit it. We spent about 3.5 hours looking around the castle, including the tour in total, and then we decided to head back to the hotel to get ready for the evening and also to catch the guest happy hour between 5 and 6, because at the end of the day, a free drink is a free drink. That evening, we just had a bit of a look around Edinburgh at night with, of course, all the Christmas lights up as well already. And we popped in to a few of the various pubs and had a few drinks along the way. We'd booked ourselves in for dinner at 9 p.m. at, again, another local business that was recommended in the gluten-free blog that Linda had found. It was called The Educated Flea. It's a small little restaurant. The staff were very welcoming, sat us down, looked after us, took our coats, and they are basically 90% gluten-free. The only thing that isn't gluten-free, they have sourdough that they offer with some dishes, but they assured me that is kept out of the kitchen and in the bar area, so there's no danger of cross-contamination. Perfectly safe for a celiac like me. They had some great music on in the background, and I must say, the food was fantastic. It tasted great. We had 3 courses. Of course we did. You have to enjoy yourself when you're away. I, for my main, had the venison they did. Honestly, they gave me so much venison. 3 massive slices of it to go with the parsnip mash and everything else that came with it. It was amazing. I was quite full after the starter and the main, but there was no way I was turning down the pudding on offer. We did stop for one more drink on the way back. It was November, it was cold, so Linda quite rightly treated herself to a mulled cider. For our final day in Edinburgh, we had decided to go to the National Gallery. So after another gluten-free breakfast at another recommended venue from the blog, we headed off to the gallery to look at some paintings. Now, I will be honest, I'm not really a massive fan of art. I did once try to go to the National Portrait Gallery in London. I lasted possibly about 5 minutes, then I got bored and I left. So it was very much more Linda's idea to go and have a look at the art, but I thought it's been a few years since I tried it. I'll give it a go. I might enjoy it. I have to say, I did actually really enjoy it. It was fun looking around with someone else because you can obviously chat about the paintings a bit and discuss things. But the best thing for me was, and I'm almost ashamed that I've not managed to achieve this before, but for the first time, I got to see in person paintings by Monet, Rembrandt and Van Gogh. Actual paintings by these amazing painters who, of course, even I had heard of. And I actually really enjoyed that element of it. After we'd finished with the National Gallery, just had time for one more look round before heading back to the hotel to pick up the bags they kindly held for us. Then back on the tram, back to the airport, and time to fly home and bring to a close our Edinburgh adventure. It's a really good city. If you've not been, I would recommend going. While we were in the National Gallery of Scotland, I did have to sneak off for a bit and find somewhere quiet to sit down and have a look at my phone. The reason being, I've got shares in a couple of horses with Owners Group, one of them being Stage Star. He was the very first horse with them that I became involved in. I've seen him race live a few times, and I've been down to see him in his stables a couple of times as well. I have some great photos with him. I get weekly updates on how he's doing and also sent lots of videos about him. He had a fantastic season last year. He is a really good horse, which I'm very lucky to be involved in. He had his first race of the season, which just happened to be in one of the biggest races of the year so far at Cheltenham. It was a race that the trainer Paul Nicholls had trained him specially for. It was his first run of the season. He had the stable jockey and our normal jockey Harry Cobden on him. He was the favourite for a very, very competitive race. In fact, the most competitive race for his age and grade, basically. He was running an absolute storming race, leading pretty much from the moment they started, running superbly, jumping brilliantly. It was majestic to watch. It looked like he was going to win it by an absolute mile. I was really enjoying it, very, very happy. Then, at the very last fence, he made a huge mistake. He misjudged it. He jumped too early. He clipped the front of the fence. My heart was in my mouth. He went down on his front 2 feet, really awkwardly, looked for the world like he was going to fall over. He didn't. He managed to somehow stop, stay on his feet, steady himself. Harry Cobden, the jockey, somehow managed to stay on his back and not get thrown off. Either of those two things happening would have been a disaster and he would have been out of the race. I was terrified, scared, almost shaking at this point. They composed themselves after coming to a complete standstill, then somehow from there managed to get themselves going again at full pelt and keep going straight to the line and actually still win the race by about 3 lengths. How they achieved that, I don't know. I was delighted. It was a brilliant race. He's such a great horse. The adulation he got when he came back to the winner's enclosure, he fully deserved. It's quite funny. I saw Stage Start when the Owners Group first bought him and I first got my shares in him. It was a slightly nervous horse, a bit jumpy, got a bit pet up from time to time. Now he's had a few wins. He knows what he's doing. He walks around like he owns the place. He's got a proper strut going on now, and I absolutely love it. He should be racing in one of the big races in the Cheltenham Festival, and I'm going to be there to watch him next March, all being well, and I can't wait. Could be a fantastic day out. What a brilliant horse. The day after we got back from Edinburgh, we went and saw Judy Love do her latest stand-up show at the Aylesbury Waterside Theatre. The first time I saw her was doing a YouTube-only TV show that I was involved in about 7 or 8 years ago now. I think it was just before she started working on BBC Radio London, or about that same time. Obviously, since then, she's had lots of success with her comedy. She has become a loose woman on ITV, the programme, in case you're wondering what I'm referring to. It was a fantastic show. She was brilliant, very, very funny, very, very clever. She had the whole audience in the palm of her hand. It was great to see. Yet another comedian ticked off my list who I would definitely see again. Every year, my mates and I try to have a boys' day out at Ascot in the autumn. Normally we try and do it in early October. We couldn't quite make that work this year, but we did manage to do it last Friday. Now, there were 2 options on the tickets. For £1, we could go in the downstairs normal area, or for £25 each, we could go in the King Edward enclosure, which, when it's Royal Ascot, is basically the Royal enclosure. So we jumped at the chance. It does mean you have grandstand views all over the course and you can sit right on the finish line. It's also an excuse to dress up and put a suit on, although because it was quite cold, I also saw it as an excuse to try out my thermals for the first time this year. It was still freezing, but I think they helped greatly in getting me through the afternoon. Because obviously in between the races, we were indoors having a few drinks, but we actually went outside to watch every race, because that's how hardcore we are. We all had quite a successful day. 2 of my mates had 3 winners each. Another one had 2 winners, and I was bringing up the rear with just the 1 winner. It was a great day. We had a really good time just catching up, chatting, having a few drinks, and having a bit of a punt on the horses. After the day's racing had finished, we went to a couple of more pubs to continue the day as long as possible, and then got a taxi home to enjoy an oven-cooked pizza by about 10 o'clock. My kind of day. Start early, get to bed at a reasonable time. We have already decided to try and all do Royal Ascot, so hopefully we'll all get together and enjoy a day at the races in warmer climes, which kind of suits me. I'm definitely more of a summer person, prefer it warmer than colder. Not been as good for my football team, Tottenham Hotspur, recently on the back of 3 defeats in a row. I mean, I'm not complaining, but we have got a very big injury list and some key players suspended at the moment as well, which is making things a bit tricky. We're playing well, we're creating lots of chances, we're just not taking them, and we are giving away a few bad goals, unfortunately, but no complaints. It's a process we're going through. We've got a new manager, we're starting to play a new style. Got to give these things time. We were very unlucky last weekend, I thought, against Aston Villa. We were absolutely controlling the game when Bentancur had to go off injured, which was so annoying after he'd just returned from 8 months out with a knee injury. Then to pick up an ankle injury after a tackle like that was very, very frustrating. I know football's all about ifs and ands, but if he had stayed on the pitch, I think we would have won that game. Anyway, upwards and onwards, Manchester City to play tomorrow. What could possibly go wrong? Just a reminder that you can hear my radio show Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4 at radio9springs.com. That is it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other. Take care and have fun. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.